I'm installing an AC in my garage. Is it Mr. Cool? Nope. And I'm saving over $1,000. Hola! I'm Mike, the backyard mechanic, and Texas is hot. Residuals will not be awarded. My garage has hit 105 degrees in the summer. Mike the backyard mechanic can't be a seasonal thing that only happens in the early spring and late fall. Cars break down all year. So I'm installing a mini split. But this is not a Mr. Cool DIY model. This one is a Cooper & Hunter, which is half the price and probably twice as good. The mini split and all tools needed are in the description. That said, what I'm about to show you is for entertainment purposes only. Do not try this at home. I'm serious, you can't do it. Look at this warning. It should be installed by a professional only. I'm not an electrician. I'm not an AC tech. I'm not allowed to do this. I mean, it's about to look like I do it, but then I undo everything. If you have the tools and know what you're doing, this job would take 1 to 2 days. If you have the tools and you don't know what you're doing, I would guess it would take 3 to 4 days to allow for mistakes. I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't have most of the tools, so it took me about 3 weeks. I mean, in theory, because I'm not a professional and I'm definitely not installing this. Well, I am, but then I'm going to do it. So the instructions say... Who stole my instructions? So the instructions say, prepare the indoor unit, attach the signal cable, prepare the refrigerant piping. I'll just call them tubes. Mount the indoor unit, attach the mounting plate, locate and drill the access hole through the wall for the tubes and electrical cord, hang the indoor unit. Mount the outdoor unit to a concrete slab or a wall bracket. Connect the tubes from the indoor unit to the outdoor unit and mount the tube covers. Connect the signal cable to the outdoor unit. Connect to the power supply. Vacuum the tubes and release the refrigerant. Turn the unit on and test. I'll be showing these steps in a logical sequence, but IRL, it was a haphazard sequence due to ordering and sometimes reordering tools and parts. The signal wire needs to be attached to the indoor unit. The panel is open and the wire cover is popped off. The wire hold down is removed and the signal wire is pulled from the back out to the front. Following the instructions and the guide on the inside wire cover, the red wire goes first in the slot. The screw is loosened and the U-lug does not fit, like not even close. This is off to a rockin' start. I tried the other electrical parts I had, like these small spade lugs, but none of them worked. Cooper & Hunter responded to my email right away. Cut the lugs off and jammed the strip wires into the block. Paraphrased. Gold star for customer service, although they did sound surprised that this was an issue. I cut the lugs off all the wires, then stripped and twisted them. There is no room to work here. I used needle nose pliers to insert and hold the wire in the block clamp while I tightened the screw. After tightening, I pulled up on the wire to make sure it was in really well. After the 3 power wires were inserted, I inserted and tightened the ground wire. The wire hold down was screwed into place and the wires checked one more time. The wire cover was popped back on. There are multiple directions the tubes can come out from the unit. Mine is straight back, so the copper tubing needs to be bent to do that. This is a job that needs to be done slowly and carefully. As long as you take your time, you shouldn't have to worry about twisting or kinking the tubes. The 1/4-inch tube has a steel spring wrapped around it to keep it from kinking. With the tubes coming straight out, now the plastic cover can be put back in place and screwed on. The 2 tubes, the signal cable, and the drain line are held together with UV wrap. That looks like... yikes. Moving on. The studs need to be found. I'm not going to hit studs with all the screws, but I'd like to hit 1 stud. Also, the tubes will be exiting out the big beautiful hole that needs to be drilled, and it needs to not hit a stud. The mounting plate is held onto the wall with the first screw partway in. Now the plate can be made level, held in place, and the second screw screwed. Screws 3 and 4 are put in, the first screw tightened up, and it is double checked for levelness. The instructions give you 6 pictures so you can guess which model is yours and which dimensions you should be using. The Model E picture has what looks like my mounting plate, so I'll go with that. The center line of the big beautiful hole is level with this slot and 5 inches over. The first thing before drilling all the way through is a few test holes to ensure I'm not hitting a stud, then a larger hole so I can inspect the wall cavity and ensure there are no wires. With the coast clear, I drilled the pilot hole with a 12-inch long 1/4-inch masonry drill bit. This should be the same diameter or smaller as the pilot drill in your hole saw. The instructions say to drill on an angle, but they don't say what that angle is. It just needs to be downward so the drain tube will not back up, but it shouldn't be too much or you'll struggle with your hole saw. I went around to the outside of the wall to inspect the exit point. I decided it was incorrect. The tubes running down from here would be too close to the existing electrical box. I needed to redo the placement. I took the plate off and moved it over about 6 inches so that it can hit the studs with the screws on the left now instead of on the right. This location will cover the access holes I made in the wall. The other anchors and screws are inserted. After drilling the test holes and checking for wires, I drilled another pilot hole. This location provides much more clearance from the electrical box. The big beautiful hole can now be drilled. I got this hole saw from Amazon. The negative reviews were iffy and there were a lot of fake reviews. But Home Depot and Lowe's don't keep masonry hole saws of this size in stock. So I took a chance. I also bought a hammer drill. You pretty much have to have one because the hole saw needs an SDS mount. I got this Milwaukee on Bookface Marketplace for 125 bucks. You won't get through brick with a regular drill. You'll see later. Because I have the first hole available, I stuck the drill bit in it to use it as a reference for the angle. Because the angle wasn't too severe, the pilot drill drills first, then the saw starts cutting the brick. It seems to be working. With the hole properly started, I'm able to continue. I take occasional breaks and I spray everything down with water to keep the saw teeth from getting too hot. The hole saw is not deep enough to get all the way through the brick. Partway through, some of the brick broke off, but I couldn't quite get all the way through, so I chiseled some chunks out for clearance. Now I was able to cut all the way through the brick. Without cleaning the masonry sludge off the camera lens, I then drilled the inside hole. The plastic sleeve slides in perfectly. The lip is supposed to go on the outside and protect the tubes and wires from the brick, but it's very impractical since you're supposed to drill the hole on an angle. So I cut it off. The tube is a little on the short side, but I made it work with caulk on the drywall and more caulk on the unclean, dusty brick on the outside. Good enough. It's just a hole. Finally, the indoor unit can be mounted. I balanced the unit on a ladder and pushed the signal cable through the hole. Now this rather phallic-looking bundle is pushed into the hole. When the bundle is all the way into the hole, the unit is hung on the mounting plate and snapped into place. I looked around for where I could place the outdoor unit, and by sheer coincidence, there's a concrete slab right where I want it. Or not a coincidence. I originally wanted to mount the indoor unit here and run the lines up into the attic, down this outside wall, and mount the outer unit in the wall here. But the drain line doesn't drain up into the attic, at least not with Earth's current gravity. So the inner unit was mounted here, the lines run through the wall and will turn and go through the fence to the outer unit, which will be placed here on this slab. After ensuring the unit was centered on the slab, I marked where the holes need to be drilled for the concrete studs, being very careful. Foreshadowing. I used a smaller pilot drill first, then followed up with a 3/8 masonry drill. Like I said earlier, this footage is out of order. I don't have a hammer drill yet, and a standard drill is not right for this job. To make matters worse, the masonry bits I was using were okay for concrete, but if you remember from my slab video, I used a fine steel mesh for reinforcement, and the bits did not like steel. I bought this special drill bit to help get through both. After much blood, sweat, and beers, the holes were drilled and the 3/8-inch concrete studs were hammered in. The unit is put in place and there's that. I really don't know what I did wrong. I'm off by almost an inch. I had to move the hole, so first I have to remove the studs. Removing the studs required hammering them on the side and prying up on them with a crowbar and repeating until they were loose enough to come out. The second stud came out with a very satisfying pop. The new holes are properly marked and are just far enough away from the wrong ones that this should work. I started with the pilot and finished with the 3/8-inch combo bit. The drill needed to start on an angle to not slide down into the wrong hole. If you accidentally slide into the wrong hole, you better have a really good excuse. The cement dust is blown away, the new studs inserted and hammered in. The wrong holes are caulked so water wouldn't puddle up in there and do something bad. The rubber feet are put down and the unit is moved back into place. The back studs are now off in the other direction, but they are usable with oversized washers. I made sure to tighten my nuts. Before attaching the tube extensions, I need to do something with this walrus penis. It's sticking up and it needs to be more flaccid? I use my leather gloves because I don't want to touch this thing. Kidding. I'm using my hands to cushion the tubes and protect them from the brick. I'm looking for a nice gradual bend with no kinks. After some fussing, the bundle is laying down against the wall enough that the cover will fit over it. The large tube is connected first, then the small tube. They're just finger tight for now. The putty that came with the mini split was put in the hole. Probably way too soon. Then I marked where the screw holes go for the tube cover. The hammer drill makes quick work of these mounting holes. This one was too close to the big beautiful hole and broke the brick. So instead of one screw in the top of this cover, I added 2 new holes in the corners. A couple of screws hold things in place for now. The covers didn't come in this dark gray. They were white. I didn't want to keep them white because they would stand out too much and possibly draw attention from the Gestapo. I mean the HOA. So they were all painted gray. I guessed at which shade of gray, and my guess was too dark. Oh well. The next cover piece is put into position to find the place for the section mounting holes. Covers need to be in position before I can attach the tubes to the outdoor unit because the bends in the tubes need to follow the cover corner. The next cover needed to be cut so the pieces below would be in the right position. It's important to plan ahead with this so that none of the screw locations end up on the edge of the brick and mortar. Now the corner can be positioned and mounted with all the screws hitting brick, thanks to my incredible foresight. With the location of the corner determined, I now know exactly where the tube will go through the fence. A couple of holes are drilled in the corners with a spade bit. Then the sawzall is used to cut out the rest. This was a real pain in the ass because sawzalls like stationary material and the fence boards are flopping around and vibrating. But anyway, I got it done and the cover fits. Now the bottom channel can be mounted. With the covers located, I can bend the tubes, which I started to do, but I'm not going to get them through the fence this way. So I get to take it all apart. The cover, unwrap and disconnect the tubes, push the tubes through the fence, then reconnect them. Now I can carefully bend the tubes so I can make this 90-degree turn in the covers. These covers aren't strong enough to hold the tubes in place. I attach some small hold-down hooks inside the covers using the screws that mount the covers. Wire ties are doubled up because I didn't have long ones and they are looped through the hooks and around the tubes and tightened up. Done! I guess I missed a joke about getting my tubes tied. Before putting on the covers, the flare nuts need to be torqued to spec. I had this torque wrench, but it's designed for sockets. No, not you, socket. The solution was this crowfoot wrench set. I shopped everywhere, and this is the most complete set. I needed a 15/16, which most sets don't have, and it also has metric, up to 22mm. There are a bunch of links in the description. This was a torque wrench I initially used, but it felt like it was going way over. I use this almost exclusively to torque lug nuts at 100 pounds, and I never wind it back down to 20 pounds when I'm done, so it seems to be out of calibration. I ordered this foot-pound beam-style torque wrench as I read that these can be the most accurate, especially for the price. I torqued a half-inch tube to 40 foot-pounds. Then realizing that this wrench did not go down to 8 foot-pounds for the small tube, I ordered this inch-pound beam-style torque wrench. I torqued the quarter-inch tube to 85 inch-pounds. See? This is why this project took me so long. It took me a week to torque my nuts. With my nuts torqued, the covers can finally go on. The tubes are rewrapped. Before mounting the corner cover, a hole needs to be drilled in it for the drain hose. A slot works too. The bottom cover is mounted, then the corner cover and remaining vertical pieces. The top cover is given a liberal bead of caulk and then mounted to the brick. The cover is removed to expose the refrigerant valves. Moving the tubes into position, the length is determined and the insulation cut off. Using a tube cutter, the tubes are cut, which is good. That's what a tube cutter should do. After cutting, the inside of the tubes are deburred. Now with the flaring tool, the small tube is flared. Be sure to put the flare nut on first. That's just one of the mistakes you can make and have to do the flare job all over again. Suffice to say, it's good to leave the tubes with a few inches of excess length. After applying the nylon gasket and thread sealant, the small line is torqued to 80 inch-pounds and the large line is torqued to 40 foot-pounds. The signal wires run from the indoor unit to the outdoor unit, as you can see here where it is sticking out the end of the walrus penis and running down the wall. It was included with the tubes in the cover and run through the fence. A piece of conduit is slipped over the wire to help protect it. The signal and power conduits are clamped to the fence. The conduit fittings were screwed to the electrical cover off camera. The signal conduit is already a good length, so the signal wire needs the coating stripped off. The power conduit is a little long, so a piece of it is cut off, and then the wires are clipped, still leaving them plenty long. Both conduits are inserted into the fittings and the caps tightened up. All the wire ends are stripped. An O-lug is crimped onto one of the ground wires and U-lugs are crimped onto the rest. These slugs all come with shrinky-dink shielding, which provides a good seal when the heat gun is applied. The power ground is screwed on first and then the remaining wires are connected, paying close attention to the wire diagram inside the cover. The cover is screwed into place. I spent a lot of time figuring out how I was going to supply the power. After consulting several experts, they all agreed that I could tap into the power box that supplies the house outdoor air conditioning unit, but to keep within code, a quick disconnect needed to be added. No, not one like that. Something more modern, but the same idea. I used a 60 amp disconnect box. The AC unit specifies a 20 amp fuse. It goes through a 60 amp disconnect into a now shared 40 amp box which runs through a 40 amp circuit breaker. I think a fuse disconnect might have been a better choice. Let me know in the comments if I have some rewiring to do. The disconnect is positioned directly above the power box and the screw locations are marked. The brick is very hard to drill. I don't have my hammer drill yet. Water is used to keep the drill bit from heating up. Two small holes are knocked out from the bottom of the disconnect box and the conduit fittings were added. On the power box, I knocked a small hole in the side and added a 90-degree conduit fitting. The disconnect box is mounted to the brick. The conduit is mounted to the bottom of the disconnect so the length can be determined and then it can be cut to size. From Home Depot I bought a 15-foot 12-gauge THHN 3-wire spool made by Southwire. No cheaping out on this. The 3 wires were pushed into the conduit and pulled into the power box. Then it was pulled out of the power box so I could slide the conduit fitting cap onto the conduit. Then the wire was pulled back in and the cap screwed on. The wire is just folded out of the way for now as it seems to make sense to not hook up the power until last. Now it's time to vacuum the lines. It's a similar process as for a car and for the same reasons. You hold a vacuum for an extended amount of time to cause any water in the lines to boil off. Then the vacuum helps suck in the Freon as well as keeping air out of the system. The first attempt at pulling a vacuum failed because mini splits have a 5/16 flare male, but standard vacuum lines use a 1/4 inch. Everywhere I looked, this 1/4 inch to 5/16 adapter was recommended for mini splits. This must be the way to go. It's not. But I was able to use it to pull a vacuum, however I discovered I could not hold a vacuum. Figuring my flare job must be the culprit, I disconnected the tubes, sanded the edges of the flare to make them smooth, reapplied the nylon, and carefully torqued them down in a 2-step process. And it again failed to hold a vacuum. So I tore apart the wall covers and exposed the tubes that connect the indoor unit. I loosened them up, applied nylon, and retorqued the flare nuts, even though I'm pretty sure they were done right the first time. Although, it was at this point I realized my vacuum setup was wrong. Even if I could pull a vacuum and hold it, how do you disconnect? The idea is to keep a vacuum in the line so that when the refrigerant is introduced, it will get sucked into the system. I went to an AC supply store and asked for advice. What I needed was this, a 5/16 valve core removal tool. How this works is you attach the tool to the valve and then use this knob to unscrew the valve core that you can then back out and switch this valve. You can pull a vacuum faster or more effectively with the core removed. When you're done, you switch the valve back and reinsert the core. Everything is airtight and the vacuum is maintained. Unfortunately, the tool did not quite have room. It hit the cement. So I unbolted the unit, raised it up, and put it on a piece of wood. Now I can remove the core and switch the valve, which opens a path to this fitting for a 1/4-inch vacuum line. The tool had a Schrader valve in it too, so I removed it first and then connected the vacuum line. And the vacuum didn't hold. At this point, I'm thinking it's the vacuum pump that's not holding a vacuum. But I have to be sure because I don't want to release the Freon and it turns out it is leaking, because then I'll need to hire a pro to find the leak and do a full recharge. This would cost hundreds of dollars and negate the purpose of doing it myself. Thanks to the vast array of brass fittings and adapters I bought to figure out how to connect the vacuum, I was able to put together this Frankenstein, and I connected to my compressor. A pro would test the system with 300 pounds of nitrogen, but I think 110 pounds of air is close enough. Air is 78% nitrogen anyway, so I'm almost a pro. Hey, 78% is a B+. I used water with several drops of dish soap to do the leak test. I tested the fittings on the outer unit and tested the fittings for the inner unit. They passed the test. I'm pretty confident now that it's the pump not holding a vacuum. So I had to pull a vacuum one more time, and this time I maintained it for close to an hour to get out any moisture that got into the system from my air compressor. I closed the valve, reinserted the valve core, and disconnected the tool. Now I get to connect the 220-volt wires to the power box. My brother's an electrician and told me that 220 is so easy, even an idiot can do it. So I guess I can do it. But I read a lot of cautionary tales, so I was careful. I flipped the breaker and used my voltmeter to double check that I'm not about to make a mistake and electrocute myself. Should be good, but to make sure, I'm wearing leather gloves. Can you tell I've never worked with 220 before? I connected the 2 hot wires and then the ground. Turned on the breaker and no sparks. That's a good sign. Now the Freon needs to be added. The outer unit comes fully charged with R410A refrigerant. Turning these 2 set screw valves releases the Freon into the lines and the indoor unit. Yes, I know Freon is a brand name. 410A is actually Puron. If I called it that, would you know what I was talking about? Okay, I know you would, but would anyone else? The final step, turn it on, and it's cold. Success! Now to finish up, the valve cover is screwed on. The wood spacer is taken out from under the unit and bolted back down. All the covers for the tubes are put back into place. As I said, I'm not a professional, so now I have to uninstall it all. First, I remove the covers, unpaint the covers, detach the tubes, uncut the tubes,
the music is reversible,
disconnect the wires, unmount the outer unit,
but time turn back, turn back, turn back,
unmount the inner unit, and undrill the hole. Done! Now to have a professional do it. That's going to be like $1,500. I should return all these tools I bought. On the day I finished the installation, it was 90 degrees. Today, it's set at 76 degrees and it's 76 degrees. That is, if my AC stayed installed. In which case, I would keep it at 76 degrees, which would make the garage feel pretty nice without using too much energy. When a car needs maintenance, I could pull it into the garage in the morning, then turn the AC down to 72 so it's nice and cool for working on the car in the afternoon. Or it would be. Okay. Have you figured out yet that this is a bit? This video was a long one, so to wrap up with my sponsor, Crazy Dog T-shirts. I checked with Tony and it seems some of you haven't bought something yet. I think it's only fair to warn you, Tony knows where you live. Okay, actually he won't know where you live until you order something and give him your address, in which case you'll be off the hook. But that's not the point. I need to grow this channel, and the only way to do that is with T-shirt power. Or you can buy a mug. By the way, like this video. And why do I have to keep reminding you? Take some responsibility. Oh, I have a fan online. Hey, fan, did you like the video?
Dude, when I told you to chill out, I really didn't expect you to take it this far.
Thanks, fan. This was the final step in my quest for an air-conditioned garage. To see earlier steps, watch this video where I poured the slab for the outdoor unit, or watch this video for how I insulated the attic. No, I don't have the authority to show those. Undo! Oh, they'll show back up.
So you installed a new HVAC mini split unit. I guess you think that makes you cool.